We are going to continue our series in elevating women in eye care with three of my most favorite optometrists in the industry. And this was a course that they've actually presented before, and I thought it was so interesting. And I'm really, really excited to hear from them. And it's now my pleasure to introduce our three speakers, and apologies for not reading their entire biography because I want to stay on track. And to no surprise, all three of them have incredible accolades and wonderful, wonderful resources within the industry. But I'm just going to quickly go through our three speakers. Dr. Karen Lee is a clinical assistant professor at the University of Houston College of Optometry. Prior to that, she served as the director of the Specialty Contact Lens Clinic at the University of California, San Francisco. She is a fellow of the American Academy of Optometry and past president of the Scleral Lens Education Society. Dr. Dr. Kramer is a residency trained optometrist in Miami, Florida, who specializes in ocular surface disease and specialty lens fitting. Her doctorate was awarded from the University of Montreal, and she completed a residency at the Miami VA Medical Center. Dr. Kramer owns the Miami Contact Lens Institute and Weston Contact Lens. Dr. Rutvi Doshi specializes in optometry in Downers Grove, Illinois, and has over 11 years of experience in the field of optometry. She graduated from the New England College of Optometry, and she's affiliated with numerous hospitals in Illinois, including the University of Chicago Medical Center. So it's my pleasure to turn it over to these three fabulous women. I cannot wait to hear from you. Welcome to Wu University.
Thank you for the kind intro, Steph. So our topic today is the many faces of optometry perspective of women ODs. The three of us together, we're kind of scattered all throughout the area of optometry. So I myself am in academia, Rutvi is in industry, and Elise is a very successful private practice owner. And so every time the three of us get together, we kind of like jibber jabber about our lives and update each other. And it's always so interesting. And we thought, why not maybe share this with other people? Because had I known the different areas that there are that were available to me as a student, I think that would have opened my eyes up much sooner to just the different possibilities that, were just available in general. Before we get started about that, we kind of wanted to provide everyone just a general breakdown of the current statistics in optometry. And so if we look at the actual numbers and think about the number of ODs out there compared to OMDs at the moment, there's roughly around 46,000 or so in the last few years, and that's slowly trending upwards. Compare that to ophthalmology, they tend to stay roughly on track at about 18,000 new graduates per year. And, or not new graduates per year, 18,000 working at the time. The main reason why we don't really see an uptick in ophthalmology compared to optometry is the number of people entering the field roughly equates to the amount of people that are retiring. And even though there are new medical schools that are constantly being opened up, the number of programs accepting ophthalmology residents has stayed the same. And so that's been pretty stagnant. If you compare that to optometrists though, we have slowly seen more schools getting added over time. And so now there are 23 optometry schools all throughout the nation and Puerto Rico. And here are some of the newer ones in blue, even though time has really flown by. It's felt new a little while ago, but some of these have been around for a while now. And so if we kind of look at the count of number of students that have been graduating each year, slowly from 2015, it was roughly 1,500 students that graduated that year from those schools. As we've added more optometry schools, now in 2020, we had around 1,700, and the statistics for 2021 just hasn't been published yet. If we break down the gender of those students that are graduating, you can see that slowly over time, the male to female ratio has started to shift towards more females. And so that's why, like, this is just amazing that we're having this type of conference today online and able to connect with everybody, because we are starting to make up a lot more of the optometry profession, especially if we kind of break down the current practitioners that are out there right now. Those that are over 70, very much largely male. And then as we start to hit the younger and younger practicing optometrists, you can see in pink there, it's just a lot more female than male that are working out there right now. So, and currently around 2/3 of students enrolled in optometry school are female. Now, it's pretty easy to understand why the field or the profession in general is very attractive, right? If we kind of look at how we rank overall out of healthcare jobs, we were number 20 in best healthcare jobs. Out of the top 100 jobs in general, we were number 48. So just, slightly over half. In terms of best paying professions, we were number 22. And overall, the score was a 6.6 out of 10. If you kind of broke it down based on salary and our growth potential and our stress level and how our work-life balance kind of skews. And so very, very attractive. Also, we have a really low unemployment rate. We are really, I guess, fortunate in that sense. We have a 0.1 to 0.3% unemployment rate, which is really, really low. Each year, we have around 1,700 jobs that are opening, which matches up really well with that new graduate rate at the moment. So usually when these students graduate, they're pretty lucky and they can find something quite quickly. And what they're projecting from the year 2020 to 2030 is approximately another 4,000 optometry jobs will be added. And so lots of growth potential, very low unemployment rate. We can keep working, very well. If we look at the salary breakdown in 2021, as of September 27th or so, the median salary, depending on where you look, so this I got from salary.com, the median salary was on $129,000. Of course, that's going to vary greatly, and it really ranges, depending on your number of years that you have worked, where you are working, at what location in terms of, the nation, right? And just the type of setting you're in too. And so it truly can range anywhere from 101,000, maybe even a little lower than that, up to 156,000 or even more, okay? If we look at a different source here, the numbers might skew slightly differently. And also, if we look at the actual setting practices, right? So if we broke down and kind of looked at where everyone is practicing in the US, a large majority of us are self-employed. So we as optometrists, 25.5% of ODs were classified as self-employed. So we have that entrepreneurial spirit. And then after that, you have a lot of opticians or practitioners who are working in ophthalmology practices, or maybe they're in optical chain practices or government or academic settings, like how I am myself. And so if we kind of look at the academic career for a moment, and just to give you guys an idea about my background and where I came from, I initially in optometry school, I was like, okay, I have a plan. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to graduate from school and I'm going to, get married and open a practice and have a family. And because I'm from Hawaii, I'm going to move back home to Hawaii and just live there happily ever after with my family and with my private practice. And I've pretty much, for the most part, followed this plan. After finishing my contact lens residency, I did go home and practice in Hawaii for about 6 months or so as an associate optometrist in a private practice. But I felt kind of unfulfilled out there, especially with a contact lens residency. The number of specialty lenses I was fitting just wasn't that great. Hawaii is a very small island and small state if you have been fortunate enough to visit, but no one's really going to fly there for your services like they might do in, California or Chicago or New York. And so after about 6 months, I really found myself asking what else could I do? And that's when I went to San Francisco and I worked for 3 years in a ophthalmology setting and was their specialty contact lens coordinator, and worked so hard. I learned so much in those 3 years and I really enjoyed it and I missed my patients. But then at some point I was like, I'm looking for a little bit more as well. I discovered that I really enjoy teaching. And so I had some really good friends at UH at the time, and they were like, Karen, like, if you're unhappy, you need to try something new. Like, come visit us at UH. And if you like it, join us, right? And so if you guys look really closely, I just moved offices. They bumped me into a slightly bigger office, and I'm just right there at our beautiful campus. The academic life, if you kind of break down what you're doing every day, and this is why I'm smiling so hard because I love my job over there. There's always something different. Every day it's a little bit different. So you have didactic setting where you're teaching, you are seeing patients with the students. Sometimes you are seeing patients by yourself, especially if you're like the on-call doctor. We have administrative time where I have to fill out, my grades and submit Meditrex, if you guys think back and remember having to do Meditrex. And then of course there's the research setting too. So UH is a tier 1 research institution. And so we have a lot of PhDs there who are doing top-notch research. And if I was interested in helping out with them, I could ask them like, hey, how can I help out? And what would you like me to do? How can I help you recruit patients type of thing, right? If we looked at the faculty positions, in the 23 schools, there were a total of 4,576 faculty members in 2020. From there, you can kind of break us down into two different groups, right? There's tenure track and there's non-tenure track. And a lot of students and other doctors out there too will just ask like, what is the difference? How do I know who is tenure track and who is not tenure track? Well, tenure track was initially designed really to help us protect the integrity of research. And so what you will find is you will have these large, generous corporations who will donate a lot of money to the school because we need funding, but we cannot allow those donations to skew us in any ways in terms of the results that we're publishing. And so tenure track is really there to protect those professors so that when they are under tenure, it's not easy to be let go. And so they have the ability to publish truthful findings without having to worry that, the school will like punish them or anything like that, because they are finding something that is an unfavorable result at the time. And so that's really the main difference there between those two. And how you can easily tell the difference is tenure track professors, they tend to follow this tier here, going from assistant to associate to full professor. If you see the word clinical, like how I'm a clinical assistant professor, then that means I'm non-tenure track and I'm mainly in the clinic, not doing quite as much research. And then of course, outside of that, you have like your adjunct faculty, your part-time faculty, and even your retired professors who want to stay active in the scholarly world, but they may not have like an actual salary anymore. That's your emeritus faculty there. And so if we break down the two main groups, looking at the full-time employees amongst the faculty in 2020, you had approximately 51.7% that are non-tenure track, so mainly clinical. And then from there, you had 31.9% that are actually tenured already. So would like, have to do something crazy to get let go. And then you have 110 or around 16.3% who are working their way towards tenure. So their jobs aren't secured for life yet, but they're getting there slowly. And it's important to kind of know what's happening at each school, because not every school actually offers tenure. So if you're someone out there who's incredibly knowledgeable in a certain profession and you have a PhD and you want to become tenure somewhere, I mean, make sure one, you apply to a school that actually offers tenure. And you also have to look at how many tenure track positions they actually have, and then look at the people who are currently tenured and ask yourself like, hey, there's only 2 tracks open. There's already all these people who are on track to become tenure. Everyone there who is currently tenured isn't retiring anytime soon. Is that going to be a right fit for me in terms of where I want to be in 5 years? Because they might not have an opening in the way that you're hoping they will, right? And so that's important to think about. If we break down our day to day, depending on the different track you're on, so a non-tenure track professor here, a lot of our time is spent in the clinical setting. So we are seeing patients with the students, with residents, with fellows. You might be working in multiple areas of practice, whether it's primary care or maybe a few days here in contact lens or pediatrics, whatever your specialty may be. Outside of clinic, you might be teaching a class. For me, myself, I am the course master for contact lens 1 during the springtime. So that's right now. So every Tuesday and Thursday, I teach an hour and a half to my 100 second years about, the basics of contact lens fitting all the way up to GPs and all of that. And then after that, you spend a little bit of time doing administrative work. There's various committees that you may be a part of. So myself, again, I'm part of the awards and honors committee, which is kind of fun because I get to hand out awards and, look over the students and see who's been doing well and whatnot. And then there's other definitely more serious committees where they have to look at, maybe students haven't been performing and, how do we go about and help them rehab their way through school and make sure they're successful. And then of course, that's probably the smallest amount of time that I have spent each week is on research. So that might be, writing papers with various doctors here or at other institutions, or maybe just even helping collect data for the tenure track professors who are maybe doing studies for J&J and all of that. You can contrast that to a tenure track assistant professor here. The bulk of their time is going to be spent doing research, writing grants, writing their papers that they're going to publish. They're going to be teaching potentially higher level courses. So you have your PhD students, you have your master's students, right? And then of course the optometry students, they might be teaching courses to them as well. We all have administrative duties. Depending on the type of non-tenure track professor, have a lot of these associate deans who maybe aren't in clinic as much, and then they are in charge of the operations of the clinic. That's going to be a lot of work there. And then non-tenure track people and tenure track people will also be in clinic as well, just maybe a half day a week. So a lot less. And so depending on if you think you might be interested in academia, I would say the number one things there is make sure you enjoy teaching or doing research and writing. There is definitely an increased demand for faculty. UH right now, I think just hired 4 people and there's 4 more spots open already. So many different ways to get involved. You have your very typical entry points of completing a PhD or residency, but some of you at home might be thinking, I don't have time to do that. I'm not going to commit all that time. If you kind of look in the last 12 months, where full-time employees have been coming from that become faculty, we have a lot that just come from general optometry practice too. So don't think, that you need to do a residency or a PhD to join an optometry school. And then there's so many different perks on top of that. There's a lot of different ways that you can get loan forgiveness and financial support because, depending on the academic institution that you apply to, the salary really can range quite a bit. And I will say though, there you get paid in other ways. You build all of these amazing relationships, getting to work with all of these like-minded individuals. And if you are someone that feeds off of the energy and the passion of others, being in academia is just a great way to go because the students, you're working with these young minds, getting to mold them and, really impacting optometry in a different way. You have all of these students here who just imagine, like, if you can teach them to do something well after they graduate, they are going to see thousands and thousands of patients each year. You are impacting many lives indirectly. And I just can't speak more about academia. It's wonderful. I really, really enjoy it. Dr. Kramer? Yeah, perfect.
All right, that was great. I love how passionate you are about academia. Almost makes me want to do that as well. And I remember taking that photo at our this same talk that we did in Boston, and all your students were there supporting you. So that's nice to see.
We love our students like they're our own kids. They're like 100 new kids
whole
every year.
team, you know. So it's, private practice is rewarding in other ways, and definitely I don't have a team of students cheering me on, but that would be nice to have. I do have students that come to the office and shadow me, so that's nice. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my professional journey. I studied optometry at the University of Montreal. And it was all in French, right? The program. And then I came to the United States. I did externship actually in ocular disease here, and then decided to apply for residency. The residency I did was at the Bascom Palmer Eye Institute, and it's a joint program with the Miami VA. So got to work in both hospitals, which was an amazing experience. And during that time, I actually fit a lot of specialty contact lenses, ortho K and scleral lenses and soft custom lens. So I had a lot of experience. I was very lucky with the exposure I had. And then now I run both the Miami Contact Lens Institute and the Weston Contact Lens Institute, where I mostly specialize in contact lenses. I also do a lot of ocular surface disease and myopia management. So how did I get here? Well, it was interesting because when I right after residency, I started the practice, and I started it cold. So a lot of students will run through my clinic, and the first question is, how did you decide to start your own practice? And I always knew that's what I wanted to do. And I'm going to talk a little bit about starting your own practice, but these are some numbers that Dr. Karen Lee ran through as well earlier, showing that most optometrists are working in private practice, even if they're not owners. That is a main area for optometrists to work. So there could be a lot of opportunity for transition to own your own practice there. Of course, there are some optometrists working in optical chains and ophthalmology practices, ODMD groups, and other government or medical facilities, but there's a lot of opportunity to branch out and become an owner. So what is the difference? So I have a unique kind of, I guess, experience, because I've both started a practice from scratch and I bought an existing practice. So the Miami Contact Lens Institute is like my baby. I created it. And the Weston Contact Lens Institute is like a baby I adopted. So I love both of them, just in a very different way. And so that's the best analogy I can come up with. So again, like I was saying, a lot of students ask me how I started, and I started off, I opened the practice, but I had no patients, right? I had maybe one patient a week at the beginning. And I think one of the things that you have to do is you really have to believe in yourself and your goals and see how you can get there, right? And think about, how can I make this practice from one patient a week to booking out 2 weeks in advance, with full patient schedule. And I did start at the beginning replacing or filling in at a lot of different offices, kind of to supplement my revenue. And I was working part-time in an ODMD practice. And I had a patient who basically I saw, it was an annual eye exam. Patient had a little bit of nuclear sclerosis, mild cataracts. They were seeing 20/20 with an updated refraction. They had no complaints. And so I don't think there's any right or wrong here, but I told the patient, I'll schedule you back next year. Obviously you can come back if you have any issues, but everything looks fine and I'll see you back next year. And I got a call from the MD of the owner of that practice, kind of yelling at me for not scheduling the patient for surgery. And they ended up calling the patient and scheduling them for surgery for cataract extraction. And that was really, I guess, the confirmation for me that I could not work for anyone and I really needed to. And obviously, I'm not saying all practices are like that, but that was my experience. And for me, it really served as a confirmation, like, Elise, you really have to just do your own thing. And even to this day, 10 years later, I don't regret a second of it. But that was when I truly decided to walk away from, filling in and working for someone else. And despite my slow schedule, just focusing all my time on building my practice. So the difference between starting a practice from scratch and buying an existing practice. So both of them will lead to success. Obviously, if you build a practice from scratch, you've got no patience, right? So you really have to build it. You have to be aggressive with marketing. And I'll talk a little bit more about marketing. But when you buy an existing practice, you are inheriting a lot of the existing patients, right? You are going to have to do some marketing to build it because you will lose some patients. Some patients will say, well, if my doctor's leaving, like, let me find someone else that's recommended by a friend, or they might, what it is, you lose 10 to 20% of the patients that are there, but you will inherit the vast majority of the patients. So that's a good place to start. But yet, obviously, to get busier and busier, you do have to do some marketing as well. When you start a practice from scratch, you can build it out however you like. You can completely design the practice, especially if it's like kind of a new space. Whereas if you're buying an existing practice, you kind of have to take it from where it is, but you could always have the option to renovate. When you build a practice from scratch, you're going to have to find staff. Of course, at the beginning, you're not going to be busy, but as you get busier, you're going to have to find people that you trust in order to answer phone calls, in order to help you schedule patients and submit insurance claims if you are taking insurance. And then if you buy an existing practice, a lot of the staff want to stay there. And that's one of the things when you sign the contract that you kind of almost guarantee to keep the staff on board and not change everyone. I can tell you from my personal experience, most of the staff that I inherited are not the same staff I have today for various reasons. But of course, the staff that you inherit, they're kind of used to working with a doctor, sometimes for over 30 years. And so bringing on your kind of innovative or different approach can kind of rub them the wrong way. And so a lot of the time you are going to replace this staff, but if it works out, you already have staff there. When you start a practice from scratch, you're going to have to invest in new equipment. You could buy the equipment pre-owned, but it's going to be basically your choice of what you want to get. Whereas when you buy an existing practice, a lot of the time the equipment's already there. Even if you don't love it, it's there. Try to use it, but you might have to replace it. A lot of it is going to be outdated, but it's there. So that's something maybe a little bit less to think of. When you start a practice from scratch, you kind of have to start off with your own price model, which is nice because you get to call the shots really from the beginning. Whereas when you buy an existing practice, the patients that are already there and have been going there for years, they're used to paying a certain price. So let's say they've been paying, for example, $75 for an eye exam, but you wanted to charge $150. The patients are going to have a hard time justifying paying double the price, let's say. So it's a little bit more difficult, I would say, to change prices, but at the same time, it's already there. So it could make life a little bit easier so you don't have to create these prices. And then on the same token, a practice management, when you start from scratch, is kind of up to you. So the schedule, like if you want to open at 10 and close at 7, you want to open at 8, it's up to you. Whereas in a practice that's already there and you're buying it, it's probably a little safer to follow a little bit how it was already, the schedule, also the time allotted for each patient, and how things are done. You can always change this gradually, but it's going to be pretty much established from the beginning. So a lot of small differences, but like I said, both of them can lead to success. And you end up kind of designing it the way you want ultimately after you've owned it for a while. Next slide. Thanks. So when you buy a practice, you're going to want to hire a consultant. Obviously, you're going to want an attorney to help execute the contract. In my experience, when I purchased the practice, the second practice I had, I did hire a consultant, but the attorney we had represented both of us, which was nice because it was kind of an unbiased attorney. We weren't, fighting against each other. We were just trying to sign a contract in a very kind of legal, clean way. And that was a nice way to do it. So I would recommend that. But consulting, so these are just some prices to show you. Consulting is very expensive, but if you are buying a practice, you definitely want to make sure that you have someone kind of on your side doing all the kind of forensic number work so that you can know if this is a good decision or not. And it is worth the money, but I put this up here so you can see that, every phone call, if it's an hour, it's going to be a minimum of, 150, varying, between 150 to $500 an hour. So it is expensive, but ultimately it's something I would absolutely recommend if you buy a new practice. So this website, I would absolutely recommend. It's called optometrymatch.com. It's free. And I think that's probably the biggest benefit. So I just talked about how expensive consulting is, or hiring a consultant. But optometrymatch.com is free for the most part. So this is actually an optometrist that created this website, and he's there to help you and guide you in your decision-making when it comes to purchasing an existing practice. So what he will do for you, or what they will do, is after you register, they'll evaluate the practice that you're looking to purchase, and then they'll help you validate it. And so all of this is free unless you absolutely want the numbers that they used to come to their conclusions. They may charge you for this, but you can get a free kind of opinion and professional opinion. It's not any educated guessing. It's actually, they use all the numbers from the tax returns and all the EBITDA and all that information, and help you decide, is this a good idea or not? And like I said, if you do want those numbers, they can provide them to you for a fee. This was how it was when I used the website. Things may have changed, but ultimately I would definitely recommend optometrymatch.com if you're looking to purchase an existing practice. So I talked a little bit about marketing. So whether you're creating a practice from scratch or you're purchasing an existing practice, you absolutely have to have a marketing strategy in order to build it, especially if you're starting from scratch. Like I said, when I started, I had 1 or 2 patients a week. I was working inside a little optical, so it was like whoever walked in and needed an eye exam. You cannot count on walk-ins, especially if you live like in a busy city. I live in Miami, Florida. So people don't just, everyone's in their cars, like no one's walking around like looking for an eye exam. So creating a brand and the social media, I cannot stress enough how important that is. I've had patients walk in from Instagram. I have patients contacting me on Facebook. LinkedIn is great for, colleagues, maybe connecting with other colleagues so they can refer patients to you, or getting, products and services. And then Twitter, of course, a lot of people are on Twitter. You have to research your market, research what kind of publicity works. So I've done everything. I even put my face once on a truck that was driving around Miami. That didn't really lead to anything, but you have to kind of experiment with different things and see what works. I've done print. That doesn't work much. So we're really an online community here. And so that probably has worked the best. But ultimately, you want to establish marketing when it comes to your services, when it comes to your products, when it comes to your pricing. Next slide. And then you do want to definitely invest in some paid advertising. So Google AdWords have helped me a lot. That's going to be more for your primary care patients. But if you are targeting specific audiences, you do want to get your website up and visible. And so SEO can really help with that. So Google Ads, SEO, that's really, really, really important and definitely worth the investment. Like I said, a lot of people are researching their doctors online. And if you do need to have a website, if you want that website to be visible, you really, really have to invest in paid advertising and also search engine optimization to help your website get on the first page. So I did talk about staff when you buy a new practice or when you create a new practice or when you buy an existing practice. Eventually, when you get busy or if you're already busy having bought an existing practice, you are going to have staff. Staff is really, really important, and it's important to train them. They're the initial person of contact a lot of the time. Obviously, everything is better when you do it yourself, right? But when you have a business, you have to delegate. You really, really have to. And so you really have to kind of train your staff and show them exactly how you want them to answer. People are going to call, they're going to have questions about myopia, they're going to have questions about contact lenses, they're going to have questions about scleral lenses or keratoconus or whatever it is, even whatever your specialty may be. They're going to have questions because they see it online, they want clarifications. So if your staff member is not well versed on, or cannot quite answer their question, it's important for the doctor to call back. And I'll talk a little bit more about the power of doctor callbacks. But you want your staff to understand basic medical conditions, know when the patient needs to come right away. Like, let's say there's an emergency. And also, they could be a good referral source, so they can pick up on things that maybe you can help with. So a lot of patients will call and say, hey, does the doctor do this? And you don't want your staff to be like, no, like call somewhere else. You want them to be like, yes, I think so. Let me check with the doctor. Or yes, absolutely. Like, let me help you schedule an appointment. Obviously, the staff members ultimately are going to be taking care of your insurance and billing. So they're going to need training on that. And they're going to need to know your schedule time. Like, you don't want to do, let's say you fit specialty contact lenses. I just keep referring to that because that's what I do. But you definitely don't want them to put like a 20-minute appointment for like a complex case where you need to fit them with a complex type of lens. You want them to know, okay, this patient is coming in for this type of exam. So I need to, put some time, enough time aside for that. So it's training on that as well. So like I said, your front desk team, because ultimately when you get busy enough, you will have a team. It's important for you to kind of monitor how they're answering the phone, and they have to have a basic understanding of your services. I talked about how important it is for you to call back. That can change everything. Basically change your mind of a patient from coming in to going somewhere completely different if you call back. Or even helping them, let's say it's not a candidate to come to you, like let's say it's a surgical patient, at least directing them to someone who can help. And that can ultimately lead to better co-management and better kind of connections with your referral network. So it's really important for doctors to call back when your staff is unable to answer questions, or if you feel like it would make a difference if you called. So definitely don't be afraid to call your patients. A lot of patients really appreciate this. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of different positions for staff: technicians, refracting, coordinators, scribes, billers, receptionists, and you can blend these together. Some staff members will have more than one role, and that's okay. But ultimately, you want your staff to have a clear purpose. You want them to know what they're coming in and doing. You want your staff to feel like we're a team. So one thing I do is I never make my staff feel like I'm the boss, even though I am. I never make them feel like they're working for me and I'm the boss and I'm the devil that wears Prada type of thing. Like, we're all working together. We're all trying to help. We all have the same goal. We're trying to make this smooth. We're trying to create a good patient experience. And I feel like when you work with them as a team, it's such a different vibe, and I think that's so important. Also, I give my staff a lot of autonomy. I allow them to make a lot of decisions, and obviously I oversee everything, but I feel like that gives me a lot of freedom and ability to focus really on my work and not theirs. So delegate for sure. Now, this is something completely different. Private equity is kind of like an up and coming hot topic type of thing. There's a lot of different companies looking to purchase. And if you're a practice owner, or if you're looking into becoming a practice owner, you probably will be approached by one or more private equity companies. And obviously this can serve as a lecture on its own. But if you are looking into private equity, I would definitely recommend this article by in Review of Optometric Business by Brian Chu. So Brian's story is selling his business to private equity, so his practice, knowing that experience and having like being able to show the pros and cons of it, and also creating his own kind of niche practice after that. So very interesting. But basically, private equity is a type of firm who will want to buy your practice and make it part of a group of practices. Ultimately, they will tell you, and they basically sell it to you by saying, well, you won't have to worry about any of the staff, overhead, payroll. So basically take a load off of your shoulders as a private equity, as a practice owner. But ultimately, they're there to make money. So they will probably change the practice in many ways. And you have to be kind of open and okay with that and understand that before you go down this road, because they may completely change the practice that you created. And some people may not want that. So definitely consider that and understand that before you go down this road. So why private practice? So obviously Karen talked about all the academia, and I see like a lot of the benefits. Definitely it's nice to work with passionate individuals. You are indirectly helping so many patients, and you are helping so many people kind of achieve their goals. And I think that's beautiful. In terms of private practice, the flexibility of the schedule is unbeatable. I think obviously you create it however you want. You want to start at 1 p.m. I mean, you can do whatever you want. You want to take one weekend off every month. You're a boss girl, so that's kind of the impression you're going to give people. I think that's great. I love it. I think a lot of people, come into the practice and get inspired, and that's something that's very rewarding for me. If you are planning or in family planning on having kids or have kids, I think it's great because, a lot of people worry about that. Well, maybe it's easier to work for a company and I won't have to worry about all the admin stuff, and I won't have to, but at the same time, you have so much flexibility that you can really ultimately take a year off or work 3 days a week or whatever you want if you are planning on having kids. And you basically control everything from the products to the schedule to the services. So just highly recommend having your own private practice for any of the boss girls listening here. And thank you for having me. I'm going to introduce Dr. Doshi. She works in industry and huge inspiration to me, and looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kramer. I will say every time I hear your journey, I'm just left so inspired by your accomplishments, mainly as, a physician, but also a very successful practice owner. So it's amazing that I've had the privilege to get to know Dr. Kramer and Dr. Lee over the years. And I will talk a little bit about my journey. So to start, career transitions, I feel like, are like Shrek. They're complex, and there's usually a lot more to them than what we see on the surface. But once you unpack the layers, which is what I hope to do today. For me, transitioning from clinical practice to industry has been just very challenging, but also extremely rewarding. To kind of give you an idea, imagine walking into your last day of clinic. You've signed and closed your patient charts. You cover up the slit lamp for that one last time. You take off your white coat. And that's a scary feeling, knowing that that would be your very, very last time. And that's exactly how I felt, especially after all the years that I'd spent in school caring for patients. I felt like I was giving up this big part of my identity in the beginning. But at the same time, I also knew that my experiences after almost a decade in the exam lane had just more than prepared me for this journey that I was about to embark. So just a little bit about myself. My career journey started in Boston. I'm a graduate of the New England College of Optometry, where I also finished the residency in cornea and contact lens. And upon graduation, I knew I wanted to utilize some of the skill set that I had gained throughout the training. As a result, I worked in a multi-specialty practice outside of Boston, as well as at Boston site, where I was a pros provider. I'm originally from Chicago, and I wanted to move back to be closer to family. And for those who have children, as the saying goes, it takes a village, which is how I ended up in Chicago at the University of Chicago. So just about 2.5 years ago, I decided to leave clinical practice altogether to join industry, which is where I am today. I joined Dompé Pharmaceuticals as a medical science liaison. And currently, I am the manager of the sales team in the Central region. So while practicing, as much as I loved optometry, scleral lenses, specialty lenses, ocular surface disease, and helping my patients, I found myself wanting to do more science and business that I had learned in my education throughout the years. So I'd reached a point in my career, again, nearly after a decade, where I just wasn't sure if I wanted to spend the next 20 years or so doing essentially, the same thing. So I knew I wanted to experience more. I've always been fascinated by new research, new therapies, devices, technology. I always enjoyed keeping up with technology in industry. And while doing so, I started researching for non-clinical career options, thinking that it would be amazing to be part of launching a new drug and have even a greater impact on patients on a larger scale, perhaps even across the globe. So most of us as optometrists go into medicine just fully, expecting to spend our careers in patient care. And a vast majority of us do just that. But some of you attending this lecture today might decide that you want to spend your time doing something different, or expanding your horizons, or even leave clinical practice altogether by pursuing different types of work that are equally fulfilling. So over the next few minutes, I'll just go over a few non-clinical career options for optometrists, and then also hope to share a few pearls that I've learned along the way that I hope would be helpful to you if you are considering a career transition outside the exam lane. So within the healthcare realm, generally there are many kinds of non-clinical work that is available to us. And you can pursue that either on a full-time or a part-time basis, which does open up these various options for females if you have any family obligations. So consulting is a great career option. It does typically require some experience and can occur once you have gained some expertise in practice management in a particular niche of just ocular disease. Perhaps you do enjoy, managing glaucoma, and you want to educate others. There are opportunities for ghostwriting for academic journals or publications, so that's always an option. If you have a particular interest in research and development, there's always options in terms of working at academic institutions or even on the product side at a company. R&D teams, which is research and development in pharmaceuticals, they rely on strong scientific expertise to provide insights and strategic direction when it comes to developing evidence generation and information dissemination strategies. So these are some options that are available. So let's start with a brief overview of the pharmaceutical industry. Just to kind of give you an idea, launching a new drug is a pinnacle moment for any pharmaceutical industry. In the US, it takes an average of 12 years and upwards of $800 million for a drug for it to make it into patients' hands. There are multiple stages of this process. Each of these stages has its own challenges, timelines, and costs. So this slide shows you an overview of the entire process. And as you can see, the life of a drug is divided up into sections. There's a discovery phase, there's preclinical phase, there's phase 1, 2, and 3, and then there's post-approval. So various functions play a role in this timeline. And overall, you have to work collaboratively because the end goal is for the product to make it to the patients. So there's a lot of different responsibilities and roles that ODs can take on in a pharmaceutical industry. But to simplify things, I wanted to group them into 4 major buckets today. You have R&D, you have medical affairs, you have commercial, and you have regulatory. Within each bucket, you will see just more specific areas on the slide. But just know that every function has a role in the drug development timeline and works collaboratively for the end goal of reaching the patients. The 2 I will focus on today are medical affairs and commercial, as I've had the privilege in working for both. Medical affairs encompasses just various components that tie together to support strategies from a medical lens to ensure that all the science is aligned amongst different stakeholders. Large functions besides medical are sales, marketing, market access, there's business development, and they all sit under this commercial organization, which also has a tremendous impact on the business as well as the treatment for the patients. So a career as a medical science liaison can be extremely rewarding career option for optometrists who are looking to transition into industry, which is how I started my role at Dompe. A MSL is a subject matter expert. They play a role in most pharma, biotech, medical device companies, as they are responsible for interacting with a wider medical community. Their main role is to inform advice on upcoming advances in treatments, simply put. MSLs are the point of scientific expertise. They require to possess an advanced scientific training, and that's really where ODs can look into this option. Most MSLs come from different backgrounds. There's MDs, there's PharmDs, again, ODs, PhDs. It's a largely field-based role. So you are responsible for an area or region. And the role does require, depending on the company, some travel. It is worth mentioning that the role demands excellent levels of communication, the ability to provide and explain complex materials, especially as you are having these discussions with key opinion leaders. And last but not least, it is a non-sales role. So it involves communicating data from clinical trials that the company has conducted, describing the efficacy of a drug, educating hospitals on advanced treatments within the area of the expertise. So ways an MSL can educate their peers includes responding to requests of information, hosting advisory boards, providing training to sales and marketing, and these are just some of the areas where the MSL really can contribute to the company. As you can see, the commercial organization has a tremendous influence and impact on the success of the drug. ODs can pursue careers in sales and marketing at a high level. The role of marketing actually starts at a very, very, very early stage because it really does what defines what we call a competitive landscape, unmet need. Marketing can help create promotional materials and be involved in the messaging platform. And even after the drug is approved, the marketing team continues to look for opportunities to bring the product to the market. So how does one secure a role in the industry? without any relevant work experience. I believe networking is key, especially in the role or in the field that you are trying to pursue a career. LinkedIn, I feel that is a powerful tool. Reach out to recruiters, reach out to other MSLs, reach out to folks in the company, find out more about the company. So I highly recommend those who are interested to utilize LinkedIn to its full capacity. Joining professional organizations such as the MSL Society is a great avenue. When applying, it is important to tailor your CV to ensure that it meets the requirements of the job that you are looking to pursue. It is also imperative. I think mentorship is extremely important. I have several mentors who have provided me advice, guidance, feedback throughout my career, as well as coaching. Most leaders I find are very generous with their time and they're willing to help others. So, don't hesitate to reach out to leaders, to mentors that you feel would really provide you with that direct feedback as well as input. And then also, when you're interviewing, make sure you have a detailed knowledge of the role, do your research. But any role requires a lot of resilience. It may take a few applications, a few interviews to find the right company. But just know that each interview will prepare you for the next one. So it's just really important to remain positive and invest your time upfront. It certainly will pay for it in the long run. So to highlight this statistic, I think this is very important as we're all gathered today. So you've probably heard the statistic that says men apply for jobs when they only meet 60% of their qualifications, but women apply only if they meet 100% of them. This finding comes from an HP internal report that has been quoted several times, including the conference code. So for women who have not been applying for jobs because you believe that the qualifications must be all met, I really hope this statistic is a wake-up call and informative. Women feel that not having all the skill set and experience outlined in the job description makes them less qualified for that position. And we overestimate the importance of our formal training and qualifications and underutilize just advocacy and networking. So please keep that in mind. And that brings me to this quote, which I love so much, from Serena Williams. As stated, the success of every woman should be the inspiration to another. We should raise each other up, make sure you're very courageous, be strong, be extremely kind, and above all, be humble. So if you aren't thinking about a career transition today, maybe someday you will. And if that day comes, my hope is that you will approach it with curiosity, with conviction and commitment, and that you help another woman get to her destination while you're on your own journey. Thank you.
That was so great. Thank you all so much, Dr. Kramer, Dr. Lee, Dr. Doshi. I so greatly appreciate all of you sharing your experience, your personal experiences on your journey in optometry. And something I particularly loved is all of you kind of thought you were going to do one thing, or you were doing one thing, and then ended up transitioning to something else. So I think that is such a key, because a lot of people, men and women, are, I think, kind of scared when things are not going exactly how they planned. How, Karen, you were saying, this is what I'm doing, to move back to Hawaii, I'm doing this practice, I'm having kids. And it's like, it's okay that what you had planned, that didn't work out, or you ended up wanting to do something else. So I think that was one of the main messages that I got out of this lecture. So thank you so much to the three of you for inspiring us on all the different ways that women and men can be involved in optometry. And just, there's so many different avenues to be successful.